She wasn't supposed to say anything. Not in public, not in front of staff, and especially not in front of him. But when Queen Camilla told Princess Charlotte to stop making a scene, and her son stepped just a little too close behind her, that's when the 10-year-old turned to the royal guard and whispered 7 words that froze the entire corridor. "He does things to me in the bedroom." The guard didn't wait for explanation. He didn't wait for protocol, and he didn't wait for permission. He stepped between the predator and the child. And when Camilla shouted at him to stand down, he gave an answer that broke her authority in front of everyone. From that moment on, nothing in the palace stayed the same. Not the staff, not the silence, not the power she thought she held. But before we show you the exact second Charlotte found the courage to confess, and how the guard risked everything to protect her, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Tap like, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a Royal Guard story. Because this one starts with a whisper and ends with a guard who refused to stay silent. Windsor Castle in the early afternoon was unusually alive with motion. A family portrait session was underway, one of those carefully staged moments where legacy was stitched into fabric and arranged before a gilded backdrop. Staff moved swiftly through the East Gallery corridor, adjusting camera equipment, confirming attire, brushing out creases on royal garments. But behind the velvet partitions and soft chatter, there was another kind of stillness, one only a trained eye could detect. Sergeant Alden Price stood at his assigned post just outside the dressing suites. Coldstream Guard, 36, squared shoulders beneath the scarlet tunic, tall black bearskin hat casting a disciplined silhouette against the polished stone. He had the posture of a man who knew the weight of watching, who'd spent too many nights in Helmand learning to hear danger before it made a sound. And this wasn't Afghanistan, but something was off. Princess Charlotte stepped out of the dressing suite earlier than expected. Not with the confident skip she was known for during ceremonies, nor the quiet reserve she sometimes held near strangers. This time, she looked unsure. Her hair was half-pinned, ribbons dangling, and a cosmetic assistant followed her with a flustered look. "Ma'am," the woman whispered after her, confused. "You said you, Charlotte stopped mid-step. The clip in her hand slipped from her fingers and landed near Alden's boots. He bent, not stiffly but gently, and retrieved it. As he stood and handed it back, he looked her in the eye. "All right, ma'am." Charlotte didn't answer. Not right away. Her hand hovered uncertainly before she took the clip, and even then her fingers trembled. Then she spoke, barely above breath. "I don't want to go back in there." Alden didn't move, didn't press, but something shifted in the base of his spine, an instinct sharpened by years of recognizing fear in children who hadn't yet learned how to name it. He was about to speak when a voice echoed from behind. "Lottie? There you are." Thomas Parker Bowles stepped out of the dressing suite with a relaxed gait, adjusting the cuff of his sleeve like nothing mattered. Too relaxed. His voice dipped into a register, too casual, too familiar. Charlotte turned rigid. It wasn't dramatic. It was small, a nearly imperceptible flinch that tightened her shoulders and froze her breath. Thomas gave a smile, polished, performative. "Come along now. They're almost ready for you." He didn't look at Alden when he said it. He didn't need to, but Alden's gaze didn't move. He'd seen that kind of smile before, on checkpoints, in investigations, on men who said things like, "She's fine," when no one had asked. And deep inside his chest, behind all the training, beneath the silence, something began to narrow. He didn't say a word, but he had already moved one step closer to the line he would not let anyone cross. Thomas didn't wait. He crossed the space between them in 5 casual steps, all charm and control, and laid a hand lightly against the small of Charlotte's back. "Come on, sweetheart," he said, his tone wrapped in syrup. "Let's not keep them waiting." Charlotte didn't speak, but her body told the truth. Her spine straightened, not with poise, but with dread. Her arms locked close to her sides. Her breath shortened. Sergeant Alden Price caught all of it. He didn't flinch, didn't break stance, just adjusted the angle of his watchful gaze as Thomas gave him a sideways glance. "Don't worry, Sergeant," Thomas said smoothly. "All under control." He said it like a man accustomed to being obeyed. Alden gave a single nod. Calculated. Expressionless. And Thomas began to guide Charlotte back toward the dressing suite with that same too gentle pressure. But she resisted, just slightly. Then, as if a survival reflex kicked in, she turned her head over her shoulder. "I need water," she said quickly. Her voice was tight, too high. Thomas paused. "I'll get it myself," she added, already stepping away. Thomas raised an eyebrow. For a brief second, his pleasant mask slipped. Something cold flickered behind his eyes, then vanished. "Don't go far," he said, still smiling. Charlotte didn't answer. She turned and walked, not quickly, not dramatically, but with a quiet urgency, the way small animals move when they sense they're being watched. Alden waited 5 seconds. Then he made his choice. He tapped once on his comms, just a location ping, nothing more, and stepped off post. He followed from a discreet distance, boots silent on the corridor runner, past the side doors, past the velvet ropes, past the gathering of stylists prepping for the next round of royal photos. He found her in a narrow alcove beneath a tall cathedral window, half in shadow. She was sitting on the edge of the marble ledge, elbows on her knees, hair half tumbled over her shoulder. Her hands were clutched so tightly in her lap, the knuckles had gone white. He approached slowly. "Ma'am?" Charlotte didn't look up. Her voice came out like a ghost. "I can't be alone with him anymore." Alden didn't speak. He stepped to the side, carefully, not blocking her in, not looming, just near enough to be real. "Why's that?" She looked up then. Her eyes weren't tearful, they were hollow. "Because he's always there," she whispered, "when she sends me to rest. He waits until the staff are gone." Alden crouched slightly, one knee down, posture low and steady like a mountain anchoring the air. "Tell me, Princess," he said softly, "you safe now?" She nodded barely, but something in her jaw shifted, like she wanted to speak, and that's when the voices came. "Charlotte!" Staff were calling. The photos were about to resume. Charlotte jolted. The look she gave Alden wasn't just fear, it was anticipation of being scolded, of being disbelieved, of being sent back. And Alden, he knew there was more. They were nearly back at the East Gallery dressing suite when Charlotte stopped walking. No staff had noticed yet. A stylist had just exited the room to adjust a garment rack, and the corridor was briefly quiet, sunlight slanting in through the tall casement windows. But the shift in Charlotte's body was immediate. Her feet froze. Her eyes locked on the door as if it were a cell. "Please," she whispered, "don't make me go inside." Sergeant Alden Price halted beside her. Before he could answer, the same assistant from earlier reappeared, all smiles and light urgency. "Ma'am, they're just waiting on you for the next group shot. Won't take a minute. Prince Louis is already—" "She just needs a moment," Alden said calmly. "Give her space." The assistant paused. There was something in the guard's voice, low, firm, edged with something unmistakable. After a beat, she nodded. "Of course, we'll wait down the hall." They disappeared. Alden said nothing. He didn't move, just stood steady at Charlotte's side. She finally turned and looked up at him. "I can't keep it in anymore," she said. The words burst out in a rush, like a dam finally cracking. "Everyone acts like it's nothing, like I'm imagining it, but I'm not." Alden didn't interrupt, just lowered himself again, same stance as before, calm, levelled, no sudden movements, the way you approached a child who'd learned the cost of saying too much. Charlotte's hands were clutched in front of her, knuckles pale. "Whenever Granny Camilla sends me to the lounge," she said softly, "he comes in, says it's to check on me. He always waits until the other ladies are gone." Alden's expression didn't change, but a line formed at the corner of his jaw, tight, unmoving. Charlotte's voice dropped further. "He talks weird about my dress, about how grown up I look now. He sits too close. Sometimes he touches my hair or my legs, like he's fixing something. But he's not." She stopped. She didn't cry. She just looked away, shoulders curled inward as if trying to shrink out of the air. "He closes the door," she whispered, "every time. And if I say I want to leave, he tells me I'll upset my gran. that I shouldn't embarrass her. Alden felt it then, the surge, the tightening in his chest that his training taught him to suppress until the moment came to act. But the moment hadn't come yet. He took a breath. "Princess," he said quietly, "you did the right thing telling me." She nodded once, slowly, and then the door to the dressing suite opened. Queen Camilla stepped out. Her gaze landed on the guard first, then Charlotte, then the distance between them, and she frowned. Camilla's expression tightened the moment she registered the scene. Charlotte standing outside the dressing suite, visibly distressed. Sergeant Alden Price positioned at her side. And a silence that didn't belong in a royal corridor. "What on earth is going on out here?" she demanded, voice sharp enough to slice the hallway in half. Charlotte flinched. Alden didn't move. Camilla's eyes darted to him, irritation flashing. "Sergeant Price, why are you hovering over her? She's needed inside. You're holding up the entire schedule." Charlotte's breath quickened. Her fingers curled into the fabric of her dress. Alden spoke evenly. "Ma'am, the princess requested a moment." Camilla waved the explanation off like a fly. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Charlotte, stop being dramatic. You're keeping your brothers waiting." Charlotte swallowed hard. I was talking to Sergeant Price." "About what?" Camilla snapped. "Your hair, your shoes. You always get sensitive before photographs. We don't have time for this." Alden saw the way Charlotte shrank into herself, as if she'd been preparing for this very moment, as if she'd known she wouldn't be believed. Charlotte tried again, voice barely a whisper. "Gran, I need to—" "Not now!" Camilla cut in sharply. "We are not making a scene in the corridor. Whatever little issue you think you have can wait." Alden's jaw tightened. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "the princess was speaking." Camilla froze. Slowly she turned to him, disbelief etched into every line of her face. "I beg your pardon?" Alden held her gaze. "She was speaking," he repeated. Calm, controlled, immovable. Behind Camilla, footsteps approached. Thomas Parker Bowles stepped out of the dressing suite, smoothing the front of his shirt. He looked from his mother to Charlotte, then to Alden, and he smirked, just faintly. Charlotte recoiled. Thomas gave the smallest shake of his head, barely visible, but unmistakable to anyone watching her. A warning, a reminder, a threat. Charlotte stumbled back toward Alden, instinctively, automatically. Like her body had learned which direction safety lived in. Camilla saw the movement, misinterpreted it instantly. "Oh, stop it, Charlotte," she huffed. "You get manipulative when you don't get your way. This is childish." Charlotte's breath hitched, sharp, pained. Her eyes filled, but not with tears, with humiliation. Then she whispered it. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough. "He does things to me in the bedroom hall when no one's watching." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They detonated in the space between them, soft and nuclear. Camilla's face went white. Thomas stopped breathing. Alden straightened, not with shock, but with the lethal stillness of a man who had just received confirmation of his instincts. The corridor fell into an impossible quiet, and everything changed. Sergeant Alden Price stepped forward, once, then again, until his entire frame stood between Charlotte and Thomas. A wall of red and black, posture squared, every inch of his body language communicating a single message, no further. "Sir," Alden said, voice low but final, "you will not approach the minor." Camilla was already spinning toward him, eyes wide with indignation. "Sergeant Price, that is not your place to say." But Alden didn't move. "She has just reported adult misconduct," he said. "I am obligated under safeguarding protocol to maintain separation between the child and the accused, effective immediately." Thomas gave a sharp, performative laugh. "This is absurd. She's clearly upset, confused. She probably misunderstood something." Alden's head turned slightly in his direction, not enough to break form, just enough to silence the room. Charlotte, behind him, was holding her breath, her fingers pressed together so tightly they'd gone white. Camilla stepped forward. "You will release my son from any implication at once. Do you understand me?" Alden didn't blink. "With respect, ma'am, safeguarding doesn't answer to you." A hush rippled through the corridor. The stylist at the end of the hallway paused. Two aides further down glanced up, unsure whether to intervene. Even the footman who'd been arranging seating against the far wall froze mid-motion. Camilla's face drained of colour, then flushed with fury. "You're quoting procedural nonsense at me. Do you have any idea who you're speaking to?" "I do, ma'am," Alden said calmly. His eyes never left Thomas. "I'm also aware the minor has expressed fear, described physical behaviour and requested protection. That's all the authority I need." Thomas stepped forward, hands raised slightly, still smiling. "You guards," he said, voice oily with control. "Always so dramatic. She was probably talking about when I fixed her shoe. She overreacts sometimes, Camilla knows that." He turned to his mother for reinforcement, but Camilla was glaring at Alden, not helping him. Then Charlotte's voice emerged again, barely audible. "He touches me like I'm older. When the doors are closed." Thomas stopped speaking. Camilla snapped, "That is enough!" But Alden's voice came before anyone else could fill the silence. "Sir," he said to Thomas, "take one more step toward her, just one, and I will consider it a second breach." He didn't shout. He didn't flinch, but something ancient and immovable filled his words. Thomas hesitated. Camilla opened her mouth to shout again. And then a new voice rang out behind them. "Where is she?" Everyone turned, because Catherine had arrived. "Where is she?" Catherine's voice cut across the corridor like silk drawn over steel. She moved fast, no coat, no staff, no warning. Just the Princess of Wales in soft navy heels and a sharply tailored blouse, eyes already sweeping the hallway with maternal precision. Her gaze locked on Charlotte first, and everything else stopped mattering. Charlotte was standing behind Sergeant Price, small hands gripping the pleats of her dress, posture drawn in like a child bracing for impact. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Catherine crossed the space in seconds. She didn't waste time on protocol. She dropped to her knees in front of her daughter and cupped Charlotte's face gently in her hands. "Sweetheart," she said softly, eyes wide and steady. "Look at me, what's wrong?" Charlotte blinked, just once, and then the dam inside her broke. She leaned forward, pressed her forehead against her mother's, and whispered so quietly that only Catherine could hear. "He touches me when we're alone. I don't like it. I don't want to go with him any more." Catherine's breath caught, but she didn't react with noise, only stillness, and then fire! It lit behind her eyes. She stood slowly like a mother rising into battle. Her arm wrapped protectively around Charlotte's shoulder, her back straightened, and when she faced Camilla, the air in the hallway changed. "You knew something was wrong," Catherine said. Not a question, a charge. "She's been pulling away for weeks. She's been quiet. And you," her voice narrowed, "you didn't ask why." Camilla sputtered, caught off guard. "That is absolutely not. She's been difficult lately. You know how children get before events. She imagines discomfort when she's overstimulated." Catherine's voice cut through hers. "She's 10. He's a grown man, and you're defending him?" The entire hallway went still. Alden didn't shift. Charlotte pressed closer to her mother, barely breathing. Thomas opened his mouth to interrupt. "Look, I don't want to be dragged into—" "You already are," Catherine snapped. "She just told me, and for the record, she didn't cry, didn't exaggerate, she didn't even ask me to punish you. She just didn't want to go back in that room." Thomas went pale. "This is political madness." "Political?" Catherine laughed once, cold and sharp. "She's not a statement, she's my daughter." Camilla looked desperate now, glancing toward staff for support, finding none. Thomas edged toward the corridor again. "I'll prepare for the group shots," he muttered. "This is all just a myth." Alden moved, one step, enough to block the hallway entirely. He didn't say a word, but he didn't need to, because Thomas knew exactly what that step meant. And so did everyone else. The sound of polished boots on stone snapped every head toward the far end of the gallery. Prince William didn't rush. He didn't need to. His stride was measured, clipped, deliberate, flanked by two aides trailing half a pace behind, their expressions tight. Whatever Catherine had relayed in her private message, whatever the aide had whispered in his ear, it had brought him here in less than 3 minutes. And the moment he turned the corner and saw the scene, he stopped. Charlotte, folded into Catherine's arms, her forehead buried under her mother's chin. Camilla, frozen mid-step, hands curled as if still grasping for control. Thomas, red-faced, caught between defiance and calculation. And Sergeant Alden Price, standing firm as a pillar between predator and child. William's gaze didn't flicker. He took it all in without a word, then stepped into the centre of the corridor. "Sergeant Price," he said calmly, "brief me." Catherine looked up at William as he finished. Her eyes were unreadable, but her arms held Charlotte tighter. William nodded once. Then, for the first time since arriving, he turned toward his daughter. She peeked out from her mother's embrace, eyes wide, frightened, but watching. He lowered himself slightly, voice soft. "Charlotte," he said, "sweetheart, did he touch you in a way that made you uncomfortable?" A beat. Then she nodded. William didn't ask anything else and didn't make her repeat the words, didn't press. He simply stood again. Something in his expression had changed. Not rage, not shock, but steel. Cold, institutional steel, forged in the shape of a father. He turned to Thomas. "You're not leaving this corridor." Thomas blinked. "William." "Not," he said flatly, "a step." Camilla moved to intervene. "William, this is spiralling. She's confused. They imagine all sorts of things. I'm sure she—" William didn't look at her. He didn't need to. His entire attention remained locked on the man in front of him. The man his daughter feared. And in that silence, thick with power, brittle with truth, everyone felt it. The tone of the palace had changed. Thomas shifted his weight, one foot sliding subtly behind the other, like he was preparing to walk, not run, not flee, just step away. Reclaim space. Reclaim narrative. "William, let's be reasonable," he said, voice carefully lowered. "She's a child. They get attached. They imagine things. You know how children are—" William raised one hand. "Stop speaking." It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, but it landed like a verdict. Thomas hesitated, then chuckled softly, nervously. "I'm not going to stand here and be humiliated like this. Mother, say something, please." Camilla opened her mouth, but no sound came. Her eyes darted between her son and William, as if trying to calculate which reality to commit to. "She's confused," she muttered at last. "This isn't— It's not a crime for him to check in on her." "She said he closes the door," Catherine said. Her voice wasn't raised either, but it struck with deadly clarity. "She said he touches her hair, her legs, that he sits too close, that he tells her not to embarrass you." Thomas exhaled hard, like a man being unfairly accused. "Oh, for God's sake. She was probably talking about when I helped fix her hem last week. She panicked. She doesn't understand boundaries yet." "She understands fear," Catherine snapped. Thomas looked to Camilla again, desperate now. Tell them this is all being twisted." Camilla stepped forward, trying to regain control. "William, this is misinterpreted. You cannot let this spiral based on one child's emotional flare." "She wasn't flaring," William interrupted, still calm, still controlled. "She was trembling." Thomas moved. He tried to make it subtle, just one step down the corridor, as though the conversation were over, as though his royal proximity gave him permission to decide when the matter ended. But Sergeant Alden Price was already in motion. One sidestep, one silent pivot, blocking him fully. Thomas froze. Their eyes met, and for the first time that afternoon Thomas saw it. Not the uniform, not the posture, but the man behind it. A soldier trained to protect children, not reputations. The tension escalated by the second, until heavy footfalls echoed from the stairwell. 2 officers from Royal Security rounded the corner, quiet, alert, comms at the shoulder. William gave a single nod. Take him to the internal interview suite. He is not to contact the minor. No communication with staff. Escort only." The officers moved without hesitation. Thomas flinched back. "You're detaining me? Based on this?" Charlotte let out a faint sound behind her mother, and William didn't even blink. "You're not being detained," he said. "You're being separated from a child who's finally safe enough to speak." As the officers closed in on Thomas, Camilla lunged forward, her voice trembling between desperation and fury. "William, you cannot do this. You cannot detain my son in the middle of the castle based on feelings." Her words echoed louder than she intended. Too loud for the corridor, too loud for the moment. Charlotte flinched. Catherine didn't flinch. She stepped between her daughter and Camilla in a single seamless movement, protective, quiet, unyielding. And when she spoke, her voice was level, deadly calm. "She was afraid to tell me because she thought you would protect him over her." Camilla recoiled as though slapped. Her eyes darted from William to Charlotte, then back to Catherine. She misunderstood. I told her to stay quiet when people are watching, to protect her image. I never meant—" Charlotte's voice came through, small, cracked, devastating. "You always tell me to stay quiet when he's around." Camilla froze. There was no air left in the corridor. Even the aides had gone still. No one checked their watches. No one moved a finger. No one blinked. Because it was over. Whatever Camilla had left, title, posture, maternal performance, it cracked beneath the weight of that sentence. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She turned slowly to her son, who was now being patted down by security, his coat lifted, his cuffs checked, his face frozen in disbelief that the world was no longer bending for him. And still, no one moved to her side. Not the aides, not the stylists, not even the corridor guards, who had subtly stepped back the moment William entered. William turned to her now, fully. His tone wasn't cruel. It was clear. "You don't get to manage this anymore," he said. "Step away from her." Camilla made one last attempt, stepping towards Charlotte with open arms, her voice teetering into something performative. "Darling, this is a misunderstanding. You know Granny loves you, right? You know I'd never let anyone—" But Catherine blocked her again, her entire body shifting between Camilla and her daughter. "No," she said, calm and hard as slate. "You already did." Camilla stumbled back a half step, visibly shaken. Thomas had gone quiet now. His arms were behind him. One officer held his shoulder. The other opened a door near the side stairwell. William didn't speak again. He didn't need to. The corridor had answered for him. And in that silence, thick, final, Camilla looked around and realized there wasn't a single person left on her side. Not even the crown. Hours later, the light inside Windsor had changed. The portraits had been taken, without Charlotte, without Catherine, without Thomas. The official statements were still being crafted. The corridors had gone quiet again, like a storm had passed, but the walls remembered every second of it. Sergeant Alden Price stood in the East Residential Wing now, just outside the study room reserved for the Wales children and their mother. Not assigned there, but posted by quiet instruction, no fanfare, no command. Just a repositioning that everyone understood without needing to ask. He stood exactly as he had hours before, boots aligned to the marble seam, rifle slung, hands clasped in front of the white belt. Unshaken, present. Some staff passed him slowly. One nodded. One murmured, "Thank you, Sergeant." Another simply glanced at him. Then at the door he guarded, and kept moving. Inside that door, Charlotte and Catherine. No one disturbed them. Alden didn't check his watch. He didn't shift his stance. The stillness had returned, but it wasn't fragile now. It was deliberate, guarded. Then, quietly, the latch turned. The door opened halfway. Charlotte stepped out. She was still wearing the same pale silk dress from earlier, but her hair had been brushed again. Neater now, A navy blanket hung over her shoulders like a cape, trailing just slightly behind her slippers. She carried a warm mug with both hands, and her eyes, though tired, were clear. She looked up at Alden, pausing. He didn't move, didn't break form, but she stepped closer anyway. "You didn't wait to be told," she said softly. He met her gaze. "No, ma'am." "You believed me," she added. "Not a question. A fact." "I did." She stood there for a moment longer, sipping carefully. Then, without ceremony, she reached out and lightly touched the edge of his tunic sleeve, just once. "Thank you for listening," she said. Then she turned and walked back into the study. Alden bowed his head once, a motion so subtle it didn't even shift his boots. The door clicked softly behind her. He resumed position, and the castle, just for a moment, felt lighter. Because somewhere behind those stone walls, a child had been heard, and the man in red hadn't waited for permission. Do you think the guard was right to override Queen Camilla's command in front of everyone? Should Charlotte's confession have been enough to stop the entire event on the spot? And what would you have done if a child whispered those words to you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. Hit like, tap subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a Royal Guard story. Share this video with someone who believes silence protects power, and power protects no one. And while you're here, pick one of the videos now on your screen. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with a brand new story.